Welcome to the Great Canadian Piggy Bank, helping Canadian parents raise money smart kids. Why is it that we know exactly what to do with our money, spend less, save more, plan for the future, but we just don't do it? We all have that list in our heads, the RESP we need to top up, the money lessons we need to teach our kids. But at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday when we're exhausted, those good intentions usually fly out the window. How do we bridge the gap between what we intend to do financially and what we actually do? I'm speaking with Dr. Preet Banerjee today, a neuroscientist turned financial advisor turned doctor in finance. You might know him from The National, The Oprah Network, The Morning Show, or as a financial columnist at the Globe and Mail. He's also just launched a course called Your Money Degree that is a full personal finance course for Canadians. Welcome, Preet.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here. And you're calling in from London, so thank you so much for the time difference. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, not a problem at all.
So you've spent years studying why people struggle with money, even when they know what to do. You've said before that financial literacy is not the solution. If knowing better doesn't lead to doing better, what are we missing?
Well, I think what we're missing is that money problems are rarely knowledge problems. They are behavior problems wrapped up in emotion, fatigue, and context. So financial literacy assumes that if I explain compound interest clearly enough, people will suddenly behave differently. And
Right?
that might be true for some people. But human beings do not work like spreadsheets. We make
Yeah.
decisions when we're tired, when we're stressed, distracted, or, to keep the peace at home. So the gap is not between ignorance and knowledge. It's between intention and execution. So if we want better outcomes, we have to design environments that make the good choices the easy choices and not to rely on motivation to magically show up after dinner on a Tuesday night, because that just doesn't happen.
Absolutely.
Waiting for motivation to show up is not a good strategy. It's unpredictable. So what we want are processes that work, knowing that we are not perfect financial decision-making machines, but that we are humans who are trying to balance emotional resources and emotional constraints along with financial resources and financial constraints. So that requires having systems.
So I loved a video that you did about the empathy gap, how we view our future selves as total strangers. So can you talk a bit about what the empathy gap is?
Yeah, it's basically our future selves are strangers to our present selves. And so when you think about, everything that we do with respect to building wealth and building the life that we want, there's a long-term lens to that. These little actions that you do consistently will drive these outcomes down the road. The problem is psychologically, anything that happens is in the present. We're present biased. So anything that happens in the present is psychologically magnified, whether it's a positive emotion or a negative emotion. If it happens right now, whatever that emotion is, it's going to be magnified because it happens right now. But any emotion that we envision down the road, 20, 30, 40 years, is so psychologically distant, it becomes abstract. And so whether it's a positive emotion or a negative emotion, it's psychologically minimized. And so on a spreadsheet, when you look at the rationale of chipping away and putting money towards retirement 30, 40 years down the road, the pain of foregoing consumption today in the form of not spending that money and instead saving it for the future, that pain is magnified because you feel that pain today. The trade-off is that down the road, you have this big nest egg, right? And that's supposed to, again, mathematically, this is totally rational. Of course, it makes sense to chip away on a regular basis. Small savings turns into this large pot of money down the road. Totally rational.
Yep.
But in our brains, that big pot of gold down the road is so small because it is so far in the future that the trade-off is completely inverted in our brains. Instead of small pain in exchange for a large gain down the road, it is a lot of pain all the time right now in exchange for something that is so abstract down the road. And so anything that we can do to reduce the psychological distance of our future selves to our current selves is going to help us kind of reinvert that flipping of those emotional trade-offs. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think you're referring to, I put out a YouTube video which showed you how you can use AI to
Mm-hmm.
help reduce the psychological distance of your future self or any
Exactly.
future state. It doesn't have to be retirement, it could be
Yeah.
something else. And essentially, you would take ChatGPT and you say, listen, here are all the things that I want to achieve in life. Now, using this knowledge, create a beautiful narrative story about a dream day in the life
Mm.
of my future self who has accomplished all these things. And it'll create this amazingly detailed story talking about you having achieved all these things. And it makes it more concrete. And then you take it to the
Mm.
next level by dumping that into something called Notebook LM. It's free
Mm-hmm.
and it will create a podcast between two people talking about your dream day in the life. And when you hear
I love
someone
it.
else talking about it, and this AI generated podcast is indistinguishable from a human podcast today.
It's incredible.
It becomes so concrete. You're like, wow, I am actually excited to save money for the future, which usually
Mm.
people aren't. So it's a way
Yeah.
of flipping that narrative.
Very interesting. It sounds almost like sports psychology too, right? Like they really use
Yeah,
that. Like
exactly.
you're standing on the podium of the Olympics and this is how you're feeling and blah blah blah. Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, so then how can you use this? So I saw it about the podcast about Notebook LM. So if we can't trust our tired parent brains to make good choices, how do you set this up? Like what are the specific guardrails or automated systems we can set up to act like our financial conscience?
Yeah, it's a great question. Anything important should be automated before you get
Yeah.
exhausted. So,
Yeah.
automatic savings, automatic bill payments, using all the tools that your financial apps have available to you, like setting up those spending alerts, those low
Hmm.
balance warnings that introduce friction before you get to the point of overspending or other financial behaviors that you want to minimize.
Hmm.
You could also do things like setting up a weekly or maybe monthly is more practical, a monthly money check in with your partner and maybe your whole
Hmm.
family that
Hmm.
is scheduled. It's not necessarily long and it's fine if it's boring, but you can use a psychological trick called reward substitution to make it a little bit more palatable. So, as an example, my wife and I, whenever we have mundane tasks that need to be done, so it could be like
Hmm.
life admin, whatever it is, what we do is we sit in on our couch, we throw on an old Avengers movie, some Marvel movie. We've seen every movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe like 10 times. So we're
Because they're
not worried about
great.
missing details, but
Hmm.
we just feel comfort knowing that it's on in the background. We can tune in from time to time while we do
Hmm.
some life admin. Some people swear by just running Seinfeld reruns. Other
Hmm.
people, it might be Friends. You have that in the background. It's a little bit of a treat. So what you're trying
Hmm.
to do is you're substituting a reward at the same time that you're doing something that is a little bit mundane and painstaking.
Mm.
So when it comes to that, that monthly money check-in with your partner or your family, you
Mhm.
say, yeah, we can do it, but we also look forward to the fact that because we're doing it, we know that we're going to watch one of our old favorite movies together, kind of thing. So it's a
Mhm.
great way to make it a little less mundane and actually something you kind of look forward to.
So all those times my daughter is watching Friends in the background while she's studying, she is actually studying because I've always been very suspicious.
Well, it depends on how many times she's seen Friends. My wife is a
She's
big,
seen it a
big,
lot.
yeah. Okay. So in that case, I think it's more having something in the background there that is
Yeah.
comforting, right? And so
Yeah.
if she's
Yeah.
creating a comforting environment to do her work, I
Yeah.
suppose that's a good thing as long as, you keep that under check.
That's so interesting. Oh, she's got off the hook there. And you know what? And I find this really fascinating because I did an experiment this week where my poor child has numerous bank accounts because I'm experimenting with them all and looking at them all. And I just recently put her on My Dough. It's a youth account and it lets them save money. Every week with her allowance, I've always put some money towards invest and some money towards charity. And then this week was the first experiment where I said, okay, you're going to own your charity money. I have a charity bucket set up in My Dough. If you want to put money into your charity bucket, you can. And I put the first chunk into the charity bucket. Last night, I get an alert going, your child has moved the charity bucket back into spend. How have I failed so quickly? So if any parents feeling guilty out there, I have apparently failed in all of my life lessons with my child. Okay, so we've talked about biology, AI, and automation. So if a listener does just one thing this week to close the gap between their intentions and their actions, what should it be?
If there's just one thing, I would say pick
Yeah.
one financial decision you keep postponing and
Mm,
remove yourself from it. And what I mean by
mm,
that is you're either going to automate it or you're going to figure out that one step that you could call pre-commitment, and you're going to pre-commit to doing something about that decision. So I'll give you an example.
mm,
So, for me, I like the idea of going to the gym on a regular basis. I don't
mhm,
necessarily follow through as much as I would like to. And what I found is it's not about being at the gym and doing the reps and putting in the hard work. It's about
mhm,
getting to the gym.
mhm,
So anything I can do to reduce the friction of getting to the gym is going to make me more likely to work out. Because once I'm there, I have a great time. I was like, yeah, this was great use of time.
mm,
I'm enjoying this. This feels great. And I feel great afterwards, right? It's a very
yeah.
good thing. So the friction point for me was just getting to the gym. So for a lot of people, it could be setting up their wills and powers of attorney. Everyone
Mhm.
puts that off, right?
I
So what you
hear
need to
that.
do is
Yeah.
either book the appointment with a human lawyer or
Mhm.
just go to one of the online will websites if you have a
Yeah.
simple estate and make an appointment in your calendar to block off time to do it. And the online ones don't take long, like 20 minutes.
No.
But if you're going to use a human lawyer, because maybe your estate's a little bit more complex, just book the meeting and figure out what's going to
Mhm.
happen later. Just make that first step. For me, it's like just get to the gym and everything will kind
Mhm.
of figure it itself after that. That's fine.
Agreed, agreed. Okay, so you and I talked a little bit about AI and how AI is changing money before the show. I see this as going to be huge for our kids as they grow up. So, if you were raising a 10-year-old today, what is the one money skill you'd focus on teaching them to prepare for this AI-driven future?
Yeah, great question. It wouldn't be necessarily saving. And you and I talked about this before. That was kind of like the
Yeah.
previous mantra was, yeah, financial literacy is all about just save a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think today it has changed a little bit. Certainly saving is still important, but I think it's more
Mhm.
about impulse control and judgment.
Agreed.
AI is going to make it easier to spend money. It's going to make it easier to spend money faster. It's going to be
Mhm.
hyper personalized ads. It's going to be every psychological trick in
Mhm.
the book is going to be thrown at us to part us from our money. So, what I think people need to do is think again about those systems that you need to put in place as a defense mechanism.
Mhm.
Introducing pauses, setting up those alerts, anything you can do to introduce friction is going to be important.
Mhm.
When talking about teaching a child what a core skill is about dealing with money, it is that it is not about knowing everything. It is
Mhm.
about learning how to learn about money
Mhm.
because over the course of their lifetime, there's going to be many new financial products out there, different strategies. I mean, we didn't grow up in a world of cryptocurrency, but now it's everywhere.
Mhm.
And kids are getting more information about crypto than parents are getting. And it's an uneven playing field.
Mhm.
And so they need to know that this is always going to be the case. There's always going to be new products, new strategies. And so it's okay if you don't know everything. No one knows
Yeah.
everything about money.
Yeah.
It is really important to learn how to learn. And part of that is coming
Right.
up with a framework that will give you confidence when you eventually do make a decision. So
Mhm.
there's this concept, you may have heard of this before, called red teaming a decision. And this became
No.
popular during the Cold War. And it was
Mm,
basically a strategy when you are creating a battle plan, an action, a decision, you then task someone on your team to try and poke holes in it. They're the red team.
mhm,
They're trying to play devil's advocate, find all the flaws in your plan. And when they do that and they present their findings, then you have a better sense of, where are the weaknesses in my decision, or do I have more confidence in my decision?
mhm,
So you can red team yourself. And I think that's
mm,
actually a really great use of AI. So, for example, when people decide they want to work with a financial advisor, they can ask
mhm,
AI, hey, give me a list of questions I should ask to make sure that I
mhm,
get the most value, or I know what important questions to ask this advisor. And we're also starting to see a lot of people after they meet with an accountant, a lawyer,
mhm.
financial advisor, they fact check them with AI. So it helps people be a little bit
Amazing.
more informed and increases the level of discourse in those
Mhm,
conversations. But these are skills that we can start teaching kids in terms of pausing and
Mhm.
always trying to play their own devil's advocate, which will help them have more confidence when making decisions ultimately.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's what I keep hearing again and again. I just took Instagram off my cell phone just so if I want to go on Instagram, I have to come to my computer. I have to load
Hmm.
it. I can't get away
Yeah.
from it because
Yeah, so
I
you've
need it.
introduced friction, which is great, right? You
Absolutely.
introduce friction to the things you want to
Huge.
do less of and reduce friction
Absolutely.
to the things you want to do more of.
Absolutely. Although I have so much time now. Weird. It's depressing that I have spent that much on Instagram. I didn't think I did. I had all the limits, I had everything. And I was like, actually, you know what? I'm still going on it way too much. I need to just remove it. But yeah,
Yeah, but
no,
I'm
I
sure
completely
removing it
agree.
from your phone, if you look at your average screen time usage and all
Yeah,
that, like those stats are so scary.
so scary. And I think I'm so good and it's just shocking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so then you may have just answered this, maybe the same answer, but I'm just going to ask the question in a different way. So many parents feel pressure to get money right for their kids. From a behavioral finance perspective, what do you think actually matters the most?
Well, I think what matters most is not perfection. It
Okay.
is emotional safety around talking about money and emotional safety around learning about money. You know,
Mhm.
kids who grow up seeing mistakes handled calmly, they will
Mm.
learn resilience. Kids who see money discussed openly, they will
Mhm.
learn confidence. You do
Awesome.
not need to get money right. In fact, in an earlier version of my research, I looked at the impact of communication within a household about money on the children's future financial well-being. And we didn't even sort of control for whether or not the communication was accurate or not about the things people were saying about money. It was just, did your household talk about money when you were growing up? And it was one of the most significant findings was kids who grew up in a household where people just talked about money. You just talked about it on a regular
Mm.
basis. They were much more better off financially down the road because they were willing to ask questions.
Mm.
Communicating about money was a normal thing. And the contrast is there's some households where you don't say anything about money.
Mm.
And so kids don't learn anything about it. They don't learn, basic financial literacy. They don't understand the emotional side of money and they feel
Mhm.
afraid to talk about it. So, communicating about money is incredibly important. And so, I would say, I
Agreed.
would end on this. You don't need to get money right. You need to get money human. That's what sticks for life.
Great.
So, yeah, normalize talking about it, being calm about considering, what the options are when it comes to, hey, I just received my credit card statement online. The balance is larger than normal, but we're going to maybe make a trade off to pay it off so that we don't pay interest. Just
Mm.
normalize talking about things like that. And that's going to pay dividends down the road for your kids.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's incredible. Okay, thanks so much, Preet. I really appreciate the time that you had today with us, and what an incredible, incredible episode.
Pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much for having me.
Before we wrap up, I want to briefly tie together what Preet shared today because it explains something so many parents quietly struggle with. We don't fail with money because we don't care or because we don't know what to do. We struggle because money decisions are made when we're tired, stressed, or juggling 100 competing priorities. Our brains are wired to focus on what's urgent right now, not what matters decades from now. And relying on willpower, especially at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday, isn't a realistic strategy. What actually helps is designing systems that work with our brains instead of against them. Automating important decisions, adding friction to impulsive spending, and making long term goals feel more real and less abstract. And just as importantly, creating emotional safety around money at home, talking about it openly, calmly, and without the pressure to be perfect. As Preet put it perfectly, our kids don't need us to get money right, they need us to get money human. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with another parent. Follow the show or leave a quick review. It really helps more families find these amazing conversations. I'm Christi Rae, and this is the Great Canadian Piggy Bank, helping Canadian parents raise money smart kids.